73% of users say that if a brand doesn't respond immediately on social media, they'll buy from a competitor, according to Sprout Social's 2025 Social Content Benchmark report. Turns out that your time to response might actually be more important than what you say to the people who engage with your brand on social media. Most brands use their social channels to advertise, some of them use them to listen, very few use them to interact. So, how can you transform your social channels from a passive monitoring channel into a hub for meaningful customer conversations? I'm Benjamin Shapiro, and joining me today is Matthew McGrory, the co founder and CEO of Arwen.ai, which helps marketing teams amplify positive social interactions. And today, Matthew is going to explain how AI is revolutionizing social media management. Matthew, welcome to the MarTech podcast.
Hi, Benjamin. Thanks for having me.
Very excited to have you here. Excited to dig into some of the changes that artificial intelligence is having in social media, specifically moving it from being a passive monitoring tool to a place where proactive conversations can happen. Tell me a little bit about how AI is transforming social media to move it from passive monitoring to more conversational.
It's speed of light stuff and it's changing month to month. But what we are really seeing is brands are finally realizing that social media is about being social. It's about having conversations. It's a great place to interact with your customers and your prospects. And what AI is finally allowing people to do is find the buying signals, find the golden nuggets of conversations that they want to engage with, and find the people that are positive for their brand, and allowing them to kind of automate some of those traditionally very labor intensive processes, and kind of get on top of those overwhelming expectations we're seeing from a lot of social media users, that they want to talk to people right now, and they want instant reaction to what's being said and what they're saying and what they're asking.
It's funny because I think of social media, in the layman's term of the first challenge is figuring out what you're going to post, right? That seems to be the biggest challenge for most social media marketers is what am I going to put out into the world that's going to capture attention and hopefully create some engagement. And it seems like you're saying that the engagement actually is really the priority. Talk me through that.
Yeah, so uh, it's like social media gives us the benefit of it's a two-way street. Old school advertising on TV was about sending my message, broadcasting the message out to the world. That's kind of 1990s technology. We're in the 2020s now, and we've got the opportunity to say what we want to say. People respond. We engage in a conversation, and that makes people feel close to the brand, close to the product, close to the channel, close to the subscription that we want to kind of put them onto, and that's really kind of, it feels like publishing is half the battle. And where people are really waking up, mature social media teams, is they get that they have to interact. You talked about the Sprout Social report. In one of the other reports we looked at, they reviewed, it was a 2024 report, that only 7% of brands, and we're talking kind of the kind of top 500 B2C brands, US and Europe, only 7% are actually engaging meaningfully in responding to people when they talk to them on social media.
So it seems like there's a big opportunity here to engage in more social listening than thinking about social media as a publishing channel. Talk me through a little of the social media listening best practices.
Yeah. So what a brand really needs to do is kind of understand the important conversations to them. So I talked about buying signals. Different brands will have different buying signals. It might be someone asking questions. It might be someone asking specifically about a product type. It might be someone engaging in a conversation that's positive with your brand. And then it's about, once you've found those bits of content, it's about leaning into those particular conversations, and then providing information to the client, providing information to the customer, and making that happen.
It seems like a big challenge here when you're talking about social listening. You're essentially mining the social media channels, and instead of trying to push content out and start conversations, you're looking for where conversations are happening and trying to engage them. And hopefully they're related to your brands. How can marketers leverage sentiment analysis to convert social media insights and those sort of offline, they're not offline, but conversations that are about your brand but not specifically tagging your brand, and how can you turn them into interactions that are personalized at scale?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is where AI really takes us into a new domain where we haven't been before, because it allows us to have individualized uh, conversations automated at scale that perhaps we have humans in the loop that are actually posting them. I don't think anyone's confident enough in the technology to be letting it just go free reign and automate, but it means that social media managers can have 80% of that content created for them. They can tweak it and then send it out to the customers. um, the other thing you can do at scale is create insight. So, we've had clients like bar chains that might have hundreds of different bars and restaurants, and they want to know sentiment across different branches in different geographic jurisdictions. What are people saying in this state or this country or this continent? And they're able to understand that voice of the customer of what's being said across those brands. So I think that's really important to get that feedback loop. We were talking about how publishing is half of the battle. If you get the feedback loop, then the next time you publish something, that becomes really relevant to the people you're talking to, and you're not just making up content in the back room and you don't really know what's landing with your clients and your
Yeah,
customers.
about 15 years ago, I started my first startup. It's called strumschool.com. I think the website, I know I own the domain. I'm not even sure if the website still works. It was a guitar lesson marketplace to connect students and teachers. And I was thinking through the marketing strategy. And at the time, I was still working a full time job at eBay. And the head of public relations at eBay at the time gave me some advice. He said, "You don't want to go and build an organic growth channel. You want to mine the organic growth channels for the conversations that are happening." And the example he gave me is, instead of you pushing strumschool.com can teach you how to play like Jimi Hendrix, you want to just look on Twitter for the people that are saying the words "how to guitar." I want to learn how to play guitar like Jimi Hendrix, and then figure out who is having those conversations and then respond directly to them. And so you're starting that personalized engagement. And that essentially was the first sort of foray for me into sentiment analysis and understanding where the conversations were happening. You mentioned AI is making that easier. Is it about finding who is talking about things related to your brand, or is it purely like responding to comments with what we think is appropriate?
So it's definitely a mix of that. We're finding that we use a technique out of Facebook Labs called retrieval augmented generation, and we do two things with that. We look at what the client thinks is an important conversation, and we try and find those conversations either on their owned brands or in conversations going out outside their brands. When they find the places where those conversations happening, they need to then come up with a strategy of how they respond to that. It might be that they step into the conversation. It might be they go, so many of our audience is over here. We need to participate in that somehow. It's not enough just to reply. Maybe we do a sponsorship partnership. Maybe we partner with that channel from an influencer perspective. So there are kind of different ways to step into that conversation than just jumping in and replying. I think where we've got, so we've just partnered with NWSL, the National Women's Soccer League. And obviously, as you can understand, they've got pretty chunky channels with lots of followers, lots of fans. And their big thing is around fan engagement. If they create lots of fan engagement, during the week, during the build up, they'll sell more tickets, more people will come, more people will watch the game. So for them, it's about stepping into those spaces either on their channels or just outside their channels and making that conversation exciting, kind of understanding where people are at and what they're looking forward to, what they're reviewing about last week's game, and kind of making that really engaging, exciting for those fans, which is a mix of both of those places you were talking about. I've got to step into both of those.
What was the name of the tool that you used from Facebook Labs?
So it's a technique called retrieval augmented generation, and this is where you take a brand's content of their own. So we might take their brand guidelines, their website, frequently asked questions. Typically, in a customer experience environment, you've got a cheat sheet that the agents use to answer questions.
Mhm.
We take all of that. For a Canadian bank, we did some work for. They had 130 pages. Think, what they get asked questions like, what's the interest rate on your credit card, and what's your mortgage rate, and things like that. So you take all that information, you team that up with a large language model that speaks English very well, and then that gives a response. So you put in the comment from social media, and that gives a
Okay.
response in the brand voice of the brand themselves, and it's factually correct and it's tonally correct as well. And those two things are really important for brands.
Yeah, that supports the copy creation, but the piece that I'm missing is how do you find the watering hole? How do you know where people are having the conversations about your brand that are relevant that you should respond to?
Yeah, so it's a mix. So you need a listening tool, and that can be a listening tool on your own channels of your own. So you kind of need to be analyzing those, and you need a tool that looks at the wider, the wider social media sphere to try and get some intelligence about where things are going on. And in order to do that, you need to start your place at the very simple way of doing it is with prompt scripting. So you write a prompt which is, I am a retail brand called whatever my name is. I'm selling. You could try this on ChatGPT. Selling this water in the state of whatever, Ohio, and I'm looking to engage people that are going out to eating Italian food, for example. I'm making it up as I go along here.
Yeah.
But what we're doing there is that's what we're looking for, and then what ChatGPT will do is then help you with the content provided, help you target the right people. So you'll have a mass of social media comments, and then it'll find you the comments that meet your prompt guidelines, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so you're using some of the platform LLMs, GPT and Claude, Gemini, to essentially do the legwork of scanning whatever social media networks you think are interesting and finding the relevant comments so you have some stuff to respond to. That's helping you identify your watering holes.
Absolutely, yeah, that's absolutely. I mean, there are some collection nuances that you have to have access to your own data, your own comments. So there's some work you have to do to kind of go grab them. But once you've grabbed them, you can use those large language models to overlay onto that data and find you. We call them your golden needles in your haystack, your comment mountains, your haystacks.
Here's the thing that I guess occurs to me or even potentially concerns me. You can use the sort of platforms to find the watering holes. You can use your Facebook lab tools to craft your responses, and you can essentially automate social media engagement in your brand's tone. But your brand reputation is more fragile than ever. So, what AI powered strategies should companies use to manage negative content? How do you avoid some of the sort of backlash and negative connotations?
I always talk about criticism versus toxicity, and there's a number of things you can. So most brands are entitled to remove toxicity off their channel. And by toxicity, I mean downright abuse, that is kind of not civil conversation, and not safe for work, stuff that you don't want your children to look at. So, what we advise our clients is you want a clear social media community policy. You want to put out there, and you want to be really transparent. These are the types of conversations we encourage, that we want, and these are the conversations that we don't want. So, a news channel might be very open to all conversations, but for example, we work with a pop a girl pop band, and they don't want to have conversations about politics. They want to have conversations about music, which is completely fair. So they make that statement on their channel. They make that statement in the community policy. If you make comments about uh, controversial political events, we're going to remove them off our channel because that this isn't the space for that. There's loads of spaces you can go and have that conversation. We're not having it here, and kind of that's really where people kind of can draw a nice line. People can understand what they're doing. So that's removing toxicity, and that's removing what we would call unwanted content. And we would probably put spam in that bucket as well. There's kind of a lot of spam out there that people wouldn't want on their channels. And then criticism is really kind of do everything I've said before. Criticism, you should step into that. You should accept the criticism, have empathy for the client's experience with your brand or with your product or with your service, and go like, I'm really sorry what's going on. What we found, so we work with Hinge, the dating app, and one of the things we worked on with them was if they just reply to review comments, they get an uptick of, I think, zero point 0.9 on the App Store by just responding to reviews. They don't even have to be good responses. They just have to show a bit of empathy. I'm really sorry for your experience. Some of them were like, we can't really help you with that. It's a kind of it's a user issue rather than an app issue.
We just made the connection. If you
Yeah.
mess up the date, it's not our fault.
Absolutely, absolutely. And what they find is they up their app store score by zero point 0.9 as a result of stepping into every conversation, every review, and replying to it. So that's how
You
you deal
know,
with criticism.
I I gotta say I'm totally shocked because that's a great example of somebody had a negative experience. You want to reply with empathy, but my feeling is using the dating app metaphor. Hey, you had a bad first date, so you're going to blame the dating app for the matching. When in reality, you haven't brushed your teeth in 3 weeks, and that's really the fundamental problem. So by us interjecting and saying we're sorry it didn't work out for you, I would assume that that cultivates more negative responses. Like you're engaging in a negative scenario. It's surprising to me that you're saying actually that provides a positive uptick. Explain the psychology there because my feeling is like side busting into a bad date would be a
Yeah,
bad idea for a brand.
I think the scenario you're talking about is probably less prevalent on those particular review channels because people are saying review the app. They're actually going. Some are people saying, "Yeah, I had a great day." Most people are saying, "I downloaded your app and it didn't work on this." So there's a lot of kind of technical review problems people come up with. I I I, I paid for your subscription for 3 months. I had 4 bad dates, that type of thing. But
Mhm.
I totally take your point. There is a line. There is a line where you get to where people are just being downright argumentative, and you probably don't want to engage in those conversations. So there is a bit of a sense check on some of it, but prevailing is people want to be engaged with. They want to be spoken to. And if I make a complaint, someone listening to my complaint and saying to me, "Look, I've heard your complaint. I can't do anything about it. I'm really, really sorry." That that evokes some kind of okay. Thanks
Yeah.
for listening to me.
Yeah,
So
I think there's definitely some nuance in how that's managed, which is more reason why I think there should be human in the loop and not just
yeah.
using AI to respond in your tone and style guide, using the dating app metaphor. Hey, I had 4 bad dates after downloading this app. This thing's garbage, and you come in and respond. Like AI might respond and be like, "Well, we set you up on 4 dates. Maybe hit the gym." You know,
And it's
guys.
and you're 100%. We find with lawyers, the legal teams in most brands, they are not legally ready for automated AI. And if we're honest, we are maybe 2 years into this technology being used relatively mainstream. I would say we're another 2-3 years away from having the confidence in certain low risk use cases. So maybe not talking about how often how someone's physique needs toning up to go to the gym. How we're sort of maybe 2 or 3 years away from the tech really being able to kind of empathize in those situations. This is. I always talk about there's so many different types of AI. There's a guy in Australia who's raising a baby AI, like literally from birth. I think the AI is now 8-9 years old, and so he's growing up his intention is to grow up an adult in the machine. That is the AI of Terminator 2's police robot, that Arnie put to death. Um, we're a long way from that. This is AI being used for task oriented problems and doing very specific tasks really, really well. You've got to be very careful when you get into nuanced world that overlap three or four of those different tasks, and you ask it to be clever. I think we're 2 or 3 years away from that happening, and I think we're a long way from our policeman in Terminator 2.
As much as I
Thankfully.
love making dating app jokes, let's flip the conversation to be a little bit more positive and talk about how brands are using AI to identify and amplify positive social signals that traditional media and marketing is missing. How can you use AI to find the good stuff and then syndicate it?
Yeah, so it's exactly the same way as we've just talked about finding the negative stuff. And what we find is if you get rid of the negative stuff, actually, um, I use the Roadhouse analogy when I kind of demo our products, and I talk about we're Patrick Swayze. We're the bouncer looking after the bar. And I know there's been a remake of that movie, but I've been doing this demo for like 4 years, so I go with Patrick Swayze.
You
Uh,
got to give an overview of Roadhouse for anybody that's probably a millennial and younger. G-
It
Give
just
us some Patrick Swayze
yeah,
for
yeah,
us.
it just came out on Netflix again. But basically, I've got a bar. I've got the low life are coming into my bar. They're smashing it up. They're throwing bottles at the band, and I need someone to come in and clean up my bar and get rid of this low life, so I can start cooking food and selling food and having a nice hospitable environment. So I hire Patrick Swayze to come in and clean up my bar. So we're that we come in, we find the troublemakers, we kick them out, and once you've got that, what you find is the bar attracts. Human nature is I want to go out and have a good time. I don't want to be beaten up, so I go to the bar where I can have a good time. And lo and behold, that's not the one where the troublemakers are. So the whole point is you clean up your social media, you get a nice civil conversation going on, or the conversation you want, and happy things start to happen. People have happy conversations. They join in that. You don't really need to do anything. You just have to keep the environment calm and peaceful and happy, and you nudge that conversation in the right direction. And then, as the add-on, where the AI helps you, is you might be certain things that you do want to encourage because they're very specific to your brand, and they're the sort of things that you want to kind of lean into, and they're the things you want to promote. So then you can use AI to find those things, and then you can then lean into those conversations. And you might have influencer relationships, you might have specific products that kind of join into those conversations, which is why you're targeting on them. So that's kind of where you,
Talk to me a little more about the how. Great. I've Patrick Swayze and I've kicked out all the negative comments. It's just attractive people in the bar. And now, hey, everybody's good looking, everybody's having a good time. How do I tell everybody the pretty people are at my bar? How do I syndicate the message using artificial intelligence?
well, so the syndication of the message is you're throwing me there.
Well, I'll give you the answer. At least what I think it is. A lot of it is either influencers
Yeah,
or it's paid social, right? You're doing things like promoted posts. You're probably using
yeah.
the ad platforms on the channels to make sure that the posts get visibility. Is there a way to use AI potentially to drive organic reach? I don't know. That's a question for you, but use AI to find the messages, then make sure that they're seen. I don't. Is there a way to do that?
Yeah, I mean, ads are a specialist topic, and performance media directors at brands are constantly trying to crack the algorithms. Unfortunately, I don't have the answers to which algorithm sends you down the right path. What I do know is certainly on platforms like Meta, we have found a distinct change in the last 2 years. There used to be a rhetoric that bad stuff creates noise. So put loads of controversial stuff out there and you'll get noticed. What we have found is that Meta is now promoting positivity. So actually, positive messages are getting higher up the stack. You're seeing that replicated in the functionality they're releasing. So they're promoting in threads, kind of positive engagement is going to the top of threads. So, so if you can encourage those things on your channel, then the algorithms behind certainly Meta, Instagram, and Facebook, and I think TikTok are generally following suit. X.com is a bit controversial. They're sort of doing nothing. They're still kind of back where they were when Elon took over a couple of years ago. They haven't really moved the dial, partly because there's no one there to do that anymore. They all got laid off. So kind of really Meta's got a bit of a charge and TikTok a bit of a charge on creating that positive feedback loop, and building that into their algorithm. So the old adage of like all news is great news actually isn't the case anymore on social media. Like positive news is getting promoted, positive engagement is getting promoted, and we're seeing kind of like real strong data that supports those hypotheses. We obviously don't know the exact way these things are written. We're guessing like the rest of the market, but that's what we're seeing.
Social media, putting positivity in the world. That's definitely something new.
Yeah.
All right, Matthew, I want to move on to our lightning round where I'm going to ask you some MarTech related questions that are specific to social media listening and artificial intelligence as a technology. Are you ready?
I'm 100% ready.
All right. In one word, how would you describe the 2025 social media landscape for brands trying to implement AI?
Fractured is my word I would use, because there's just a lot of choice. I've worked in tech for 30 years, and every change cycle that happens, you get so much choice. There's so many startups, people coming at the problems in different ways, and I think we're at that point now, and that creates a bit of decision fatigue on behalf of buyers, because they go, I've got 20 things, which is the right one to buy? Who'll be around in 2 years' time? Who might buy whom? That type of stuff, and that can create a bit of kind of nervousness about stepping in. So yeah, obviously I own a startup and run a startup. So yeah, step into the startup. We're the cheap and cheerful option. Don't go for the big enterprise, because the market's changing. The enterprises are actually quite slow to catch up. I know a few really big social listening platforms, and I know their AI capability for one of them is two guys in Australia. So they're not going to move that quickly. They'll wake up and suddenly they'll hire 200 people in India or somewhere like that, and they'll move quicker. But it might take them 2 years to do that. So very fractured. That would be my take.
It's interesting that you say fractured, and I guess my big question hearing that is it fractured because the user bases are so fractured between the plethora of social media, so the landscape requires you to touch all of the different channels? Or is it fractured because there are so many options to use AI to try to monitor the various channels?
I would say it's to do with the use cases of the users, the brand. There's loads of different brands doing loads of different things in different ways, and all of those use cases, there's never going to be one size fits all, and the market is gradually niching down into, right. We need solutions for influencers, for influencer marketing. We need solutions for ad marketing. We need solutions for brand marketing. There's all these different kind of use cases that are in the social media marketing teams of organizations, and the tools you want to use for influencer marketing are not the tools you want to use for podcast marketing, for example. They're different, and you require different things, and you require different AI tools, and that's what I mean by fractured. um I yeah, so I think that's going to go on for a little bit until we niche down in the use cases, and then someone will buy them all up, and suddenly you'll be able to pay a extortionate, eye-watering amount of money for a tool that does everything for you, and you probably only want 5% of it. That tends to be how this story plays out in technology.
It makes sense that a new technology is introduced, a host of startups try a whole bunch of different things, everything is very fractured. Then there's consolidations, and then you get these platforms that are aggregating the solutions that are best in class. I want to move on to our next question. Admittedly, this one's totally unfair, and I'm going to put you on the spot. I want you to name as many social media channels as you can in 30 seconds. Ready, set, go.
Well, most all my clients so have social media channels, but I'm not a prolific user of social media myself. Most of the channels I come up against are on behalf of my children. I have three teenagers, so I'm basically on Instagram and Facebook, constantly going around channels trying to find them. So I follow a lot of political commentators across the left, across the lot. Jordan Peterson on one side to the Guardian on the other side. So I like to mix it up, and I'm not afraid to say I ingest left and right wing media, and I enjoy it and take an opinion somewhere.
Matthew, I'm sorry you failed. You answered with two questions, or you answered the question of how many social media channels can you name, and you got two: Facebook
Yeah,
and Instagram. Off the top of my head, I'm going to go for a couple. You said Facebook, Instagram, X, Reddit, YouTube, TikTok, Discord, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Maybe we're saying YouTube Shorts
mhm.
as well. Oh no, I'm running out of channels. Bing. All right, there we go. That's how many
There
I
you go.
can name in 30 seconds. All right, moving on to our next question. If forced to choose customer engagement metrics or brand visibility KPIs?
It's definitely social media is all about engagement, in my opinion. I think brand visibility is part of the thing, but again, going back to my TV analogy of let's think the 50s, 60s Mad Men type advertising. That is kind of not the point of social media. The point of social media is to engage with your clients, and that's 100% what you should be looking at.
Yeah, I think that this is different depending on the stage of your brand. You work with enterprise brands, so it makes sense that the engagement is what you're thinking about the most because the brand already has an established identity. It's known, it has awareness. I think if you're a startup and you're starting to think about, you know, well, how do I get my brand out there? You actually need the awareness. You need the visibility first. You need to be seen so people understand who you are. They get a sense of personality, they then hopefully decide to engage. You obviously always want to drive down the funnel to engagement, but I do think that there's a reason to say for smaller brands that the general awareness matters more, the visibility. And then as you start to build that visibility, hopefully you get some credibility, some trust, and then you start worrying about engagement. So I think this is a little bit of depends where you are, not to give a consulting answer. I hate the word
Yeah, yeah.
depends, but
I think it's
I think it.
So I was going to say, I think it's also B2B versus B2C. Like building my business, we're very much a B2B brand, and we will do very niche targeting to very specific individuals and brands. Uh, the problem with trying to pay for that is it's very expensive to pay for the brand visibility that you might want or expect, and you see from like a Coca-Cola or an IKEA or something like that. It's just that you can't contest on their playing field. So certainly for a startup where I was 4 years ago, there's no way I could have afforded any brand visibility at all on any social media. So you're kind of left with customer engagement. Now, once you get to maybe your 5 million ARR or 10 million ARR as a startup, you've got budgets where you can lean into that brand visibility. Clearly, you can pay for some t-shirts. We're off to Cannes Lions in the south of France, and
Look at you.
we've gone for key rings with our brand on and with some of our customers' brands on. We're doing a Lucky Dick, and I think we're going for sun hats. So that's our two things. So we walk around with our sun hats and our t-shirts on, and we know that our audience is there. So a bit of brand visibility is absolutely important. But it's cheap and cheerful brand visibility. I think that's the big thing you've got to be careful of.
Matthew, get real. You're going for a paid vacation and to have some Aperol spritz in a beautiful place. All right, moving on to our next and last question. When launching a new AI powered social strategy, should you prioritize algorithmic optimization or influencer partnerships?
So I would definitely say influencer partnerships. I think, kind of like I was saying before, trying to second guess what the algorithms are going to do and try and optimize them. you could be chasing your tail forever. I think that really is a thankless task. I think you need to have some understanding of that, but really, um, someone someone shouting out about your brand is definitely more influential than, as the name suggests, than kind of embedding all that work into the back end tech stuff of understanding how these algorithms are working. So that's definitely where I would go on that side.
The thing that comes to my mind is sales overnight, brand over time. If I am starting from scratch, I'm leaning into influencers because they have credibility and they have an audience, so I can leverage their work to try to attract the right people and actually get some sales. It's the faster turnaround channel. But if you're thinking about the overall lifetime health of your brand, focusing on the algorithm is something that you want to do slowly and consistency over time. It's your content marketing strategy, right? Your
Yeah,
SEO gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And if you keep doing it, it never goes away and it becomes a powerful channel. But your paid marketing, or in this case, your influencer relationships, show returns immediately. So, again, if I'm starting from scratch and I need to show product market fit early, I'm going influencers.
yeah,
If I'm
yeah,
thinking about making it through the 18-month hurdle as a CMO, how am I going to keep my job next year? I'm leaning into algorithmic
yeah.
optimization.
I think you could also categorize. Depends how you categorize your influencers. So I was at an event last week, and one of the guy I've got 5 exited founders that have invested in my business, and the guy said, "Why aren't they on your website? Because that's credibility. That's that they're influencers." For your business, and they're influencers to people looking to buy your product because it shows that you've got longevity, you've got credibility, all these types of things. So I think we can think about, and our case studies that we have, our clients are also influencer partnerships. One of the differences between the UK and the US, whenever I talk to a potential prospect or client in the US, the language is all about I'm so lucky to be partnering with Arwen. But in the UK, it's very much a transactional discussion. It's like you're our supplier and we're the buyer. So I love that language because that really leans into it is a partnership, and we're helping you, and you can help us by influencing our other prospect. Yeah, we can use those relationships in different ways. It doesn't have to be a specific type of influencer that we've engaged with to do a specific task.
Matthew, I think you're doing some really interesting things when it comes to social media monitoring and turning the channel from being a push marketing channel to something that pulls users that are targeted. Tell everybody a little bit about how they can find you and what are some of the ways that they can engage.
Yeah, so our website's www.arwen.ai, ARWEN, for those that the one that spell out, and kind of you can fill in a form on the website. You can email me. I'm on there, and yeah, we'd love to talk to you if you're looking at looking after your brand, protecting your brand, or engaging with your audience and using AI to do either of those two things. Then we got a bunch of tools that can help you do that.
All right. And that wraps up this episode of the MarTech podcast. Thanks to Matthew McGrory, the co founder and CEO of Arwen, for joining us. If you'd like to contact Matthew, you can find a link to his LinkedIn profile in our show notes on martechpod.com, or you can visit his company's website. Again, it's arwen.ai, ARWEN.ai. If you haven't subscribed yet and you want a daily stream of marketing and technology knowledge in your podcast feed, hit the subscribe button in your podcast app or on YouTube, and we'll be back in your feed every week. All right, that's it for today. But until next time, my advice is to just focus on keeping your customers happy.